The first order of business is city council briefings, and Mr. Hanson, would you like to
Yes, sir.
introduce your first subject?
Honorable Mayor and members of council, today we're going to have a report out from the Port of Virginia, and I've asked Bob Mathias, who's now among the walking wounded. Most of you all know Bob was involved in a horrible accident on the way back from legislative session, and was rear-ended, and his Yukon was knocked off Interstate I-64, and he rolled three times down the embankment and totally destroyed the car. And believe it or not, it's hard to believe that Bob is with us today, but he is, and he's going to do the intros.
And it didn't knock any sense to me.
You're a tough guy.
Yeah, honorable members of council, it's a real joy today to introduce Dustin Reinhardt. Dustin is a true blue Virginia Beach person, grew up in Creeds, went to Creeds Elementary, Princess Anne Middle School, and then graduated from Bishop Sullivan Catholic School, and then went to Virginia Tech. I guess we can, give him at least one pass there. So, but he started his legislative career working for Glenn Davis when Glenn was transitioning from this body to the General Assembly, and did such a great job there that our own Delegate Knight hired him, and he worked there for 4 years. And now he's working for the Port of Virginia as their Director of State and Government Affairs. Dustin was in the General Assembly constantly this last session, and I know he will be the first to tell you that it's because of him that the General Assembly appropriated $350 million in bonds for the Channel deepening. Now, Dustin won't say that, but he was up there and was a great source of information for the delegation and delegates and senators from across the Commonwealth. So, Dustin?
Welcome, Dustin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. And for the Port of Virginia, I know that the Port of Virginia is undergoing a lot of transition over the last years. And one of the largest things that I think that I see is my responsibility is ensuring that all of Hampton Roads knows about the things going on, but also outside of Hampton Roads, because we are the Port of Virginia, not just the Port of Hampton Roads. So I want to preface that before I go in. And in showing that, just to make sure we know where our terminals are, we have the 4 here in Hampton Roads, 2 in Portsmouth with Virginia International Gateway, Portsmouth Marine Terminal as well, and then we have 1 in Newport News, the Newport News Marine Terminal, and our flagship one in Norfolk for Norfolk International Terminals. Other things you might notice there are 2 other terminals. We have 1 in Richmond. That was formerly the Port of Richmond. We call that now Richmond Marine Terminal. That became under operation the Port of Virginia. We service a barge that goes down the James River from Richmond to our terminals here in Hampton Roads. So why does that matter here, other than obviously we're expanding our economic footprint, but we take trucks off the road in 64 for our tourists coming down to our tourist coast. So I think that's very important for our area. And then up in Virginia Inland Port in Front Royal, we have a truck-to-train, train-to-truck, our intermodal port is what we call that, and that is serviced as a big economic booster for our northern area of Virginia. And it takes a lot of business from some competitors over in the state of Maryland, of ports we won't name. And we also get a lot of stuff through West Virginia and Pennsylvania. I like to have our mission there. It shows not only are we here to get economic booms here within the Commonwealth, but we're also here to ensure that we're keeping up with the industry. Bob kind of mentioned why some of the monies we got and why we're doing that. We'll go into that later. But in order to keep this economic driver that we have here in Hampton Roads and across Virginia, we do have to keep up with our industry and ensure we have a good ties with our community, which involves that as well, which is why I'm here. And our big industry changes that we're seeing right now is these ships are getting bigger. I think we've kind of hammered that home a lot in the area. But as you can see, just a few years ago, we were getting 8,000 TEUs. That's a 20-foot equivalent unit for our cargo measurements. We're looking at 15,000 almost right today. We had calls from China asking when can we get the 20,000 TEUs into our harbors. So that's how fast it's growing. It's growing faster than we could keep up and what we thought it was going to. One big thing that I joke about is everybody says, when's these mega ships coming? And the mega ships turned to ultra-large container vessels, and they said post-Panamax, and now everybody's just calling it an ultra-large container vessel because we don't know what the next big one's going to be. You might as well just use the one term, and that's how fast the industry is growing. And to think about, since this industry is growing so quickly, when you had an 8,000 TEU ship And now we're seeing 16,000 TEU ships when you had two companies basically shipping one of these each. Now they're joining forces and, extrapolate that to a larger scale of economy. 90% of that cargo right now is going and carried by 3 alliances. So all these companies are forming together and jumping onto one essentially contract, if you will. That's presenting great opportunities with our port because of the size we have, and we are competing on a global market between us, New York, Savannah, and Charleston. So that competition in bigger ships mean bigger cargo, larger amounts of cargo, excuse me. So we are undergoing a massive expansion that we're doing on our Virginia International Gateway facility in Portsmouth. We're essentially doubling that size, adding 1.2 million containers through there, or expanding our wharfs, adding more ship-to-shore cranes, expanding our rail yard, and we're doing what we have in Virginia International Gateway, which is our very technological advanced systems that we run, doing a semi-automated stacking system. We're taking that technology that was the first of its kind in the Americas, and we're putting that into Norfolk, our flagship terminal in the southern end. That's going to increase that capacity within the same footprint by 40%. So that's 2 expansions. Both of those are going to be 1 million containers annually that we're going to see as an increase. Again, every year, 1 million containers more. More containers equal more jobs to our Commonwealth, more revenue in our tax coffers. This is just a quick little outline of these 2 projects. I think it's very important to see that every month with the Virginia National Gateway, we're expanding our capacity. Each stacks we're putting on is 20% more capacity we're adding into that. And again, that's every month. By this time next year, when I'm here, that entire project is going to be complete. Within 2020, we'll have Norfolk International Terminals complete as well. So here's some of our volumes. Like I said, we run by trucks. I think everybody knows that. We run by rail. And I mentioned the barge system, and I wanted to add that in there because that is our 17% increase from that with Richmond. Again, trucks are off the road, making sure that Bob doesn't get in a wreck with one of those again. Thankfully, he's still here. But those 3 ways are how we're moving these cargoes outside of our terminals. It's great to get these ships here, but of course we got to get them across to whether it be here in Steele out or on our rail to St. Louis, to Memphis, up to Chicago. We service all those through our rail systems as well. So, like I mentioned, volumes are up. We're getting more cargo and containers, but our volume as far as shipping ships coming to our facility is down. Of course, that's why we have larger ships and breeds that result here. So our market growth would have been about 25,000 containers when it comes to rail, just by what our sheer volume coming in. We've expanded that and basically almost doubled it. Reason being, we did more than doubling it, and by doing that, we were able to take over from New York, New Jersey in rail volume. Taking again more trucks off the road is the greater aspect to that to our Commonwealth, less obviously maintenance for these roads. New York, since when they raised their bridge, has been competing back and forth. So right now, I don't believe we're number 1. We're going back and forth. So we'll just say we're tied for number 1 for now. And again, I said that since we service Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis, all these areas are which are calling to the Port of Virginia. So when we're looking at our federal stuff, which I think you'll be hearing some from some of our fellows over here when it comes to dredging, we could get congressional members from other states and senatorial members from other states who see and realize what the Port of Virginia is bringing to their area and be able to leverage that in D.C. These are a few numbers that we have, 47 businesses. When I made this slide, it was actually 45. I had to come back and send it over to Nancy again because it was actually 47 by the time we got here. So over 5,000 jobs, and this is just the fiscal year to date. And again, we're growing. That is our entire sole purpose from the Port of Virginia by the state of Virginia is to grow jobs, grow the economy. We're not here to report large sums of money similar to like ABC. We are here to drive the economy. So if we're running around even, we're doing a really good job at doing so. And this shows again that we are expanding all across Virginia, not just Hampton Roads. So what are we doing in Virginia Beach? We have Global Technical Systems coming in. Of course, steel is another huge benefactor of the port, among others, not to mention a lot of our longshoremen living in this area who have a much higher average salary, and so property taxes could be collected from them as well. So I just want to make sure that Virginia Beach is definitely seeing this port being utilized within the city limits, and there's some of these companies that are here. Of course, we know the big ones, and as you can see, over $837 million of cargo comes through the city of Virginia Beach into the port of Virginia, which is over 160,000 cargo tons. One thing that I realized when looking through the papers of our records past 5 or 6 years, I believe, I did not see the city of Virginia Beach with any applications to our aid to local ports. So I want to make sure y'all know what this is. If you have any marine-focused projects, for example, I know we're doing the Lesnar Bridge over there, and I don't know if we're doing anything different with the boat launches right there at Lindhaven. These things and these projects, we have a grant system for $1 million a year annually to be able to give to localities. A lot of these grants go to places like the Eastern Shore, places that may not have the tax monies that we have available in the city of Virginia Beach. But I want to make sure you guys know this option is available. And again, it's highly competitive, but I think it's worth asking for money on that issues. And of course, the port does invest into Virginia Beach, as it does all our Hampton Roads communities. We have communities and schools, Virginia Aquarium, the Neptune Festival. We were just at the Patriotic Festival all weekend, and the Fallen Heroes as well. I also do volunteer work for our local 4-H clubs, and Miss Henley, I think you saw me the other day there. And we have our first responders that we have with our Marine Incident Response Team. Bill Burkett, I'm sure some of you know through the fire department, who is our head of that department. He's a great guy to work with. But we were here also during college week with the mobile unit that we have and helping to assist the police and sheriff's department that were managing that situation. So I've gone through where the industry's going. I've gone through some of the projects we're looking at, and I've kind of said what we've done with the port here in Virginia Beach. But where are we investing right now? And like Bob said, we are having some money for dredging, and it seems like the city of Virginia Beach did really well with dredging as well, and he'll tell you that again later. But why do we need to dredge? And like I said, we have these larger ships coming in. Those pick up a deeper draft. We're going to try and reach to 55 feet within the Norfolk Harbor, 56 at Thimble Shoal, and 59 in the Atlantic Ocean. But you see our competitors here. Our big ones are New York, New Jersey, Charleston, and Savannah. Both Charleston and Savannah are continuing to do their dredging projects, but what I want to hammer home is when you look at Charleston, their estimated costs are over $500 million. It's increasing. You look at Savannah, they're over $1 billion, and that's continuing to increase due to mitigation processes. New York, New Jersey, just look at that, $2.1 billion. They have bedrock they have to explode. Us, we just got fully funded by the General Assembly. $330 million. It is a cheap investment, and we will be deeper than all of them and can continue to go deeper. We have no restrictions overhead like we do in New York. And, of course, we have a great natural harbor, which is the benefit compared to Charleston and Savannah. That is what we're looking at right now when we're looking for the Army Corps of Engineers. One thing I do want to point out is the widening aspect of Thimble Shoals. When we have a ultra-large container vessel coming through, we have to close down that harbor. And that's not just to other cargo container ships, that's also to the Navy. If we could widen this, it allows for two-way traffic on that area, and we don't have to close it down for the military, so that we could continue having the military do their operations, also having ships go through while we're bringing a cargo container in or out. Also, with having two-way traffic, we could bring two cargo containers in and out at the same time, which, again, we'd like to have that as well. With this dredging project, I was able to meet with some folks here to my right. With the Army Corps of Engineers, usually they always had the process of how do we get rid of the sediment that we're dredging, and it was always the least cost always. Now there's a pilot program. This pilot program will allow the Army Corps to pick up the delta and have that being beneficially reused somewhere. And it just so happens that Virginia Beach and Norfolk are really in a great spot to be able to get that done. And of course, when we looked at the timeline of when we were actually going to be continuing to do the dredging projects, it kind of lined up, from what I remember, directly with our tourism costs. So I can't speak to the cost of that because I don't want to say anything inappropriate as far as what that actually will be, but I know that it'll be drastically less. So we're seeing a lot of savings for the city of Virginia Beach with this program. And lastly, this dredging material is also being filled through the Army Corps of Engineers site called Craney Island. We have currently some cells that are being built off that for expansion of another terminal. That other terminal is going to support 5 million TEU capacity annually. That means that the Port of Virginia is the only East Coast port continuing able to grow our footprint and continuing to be able to draw more ships than we already do today. So I think that's the exciting part about these dredging projects, is that we're growing and building an asset while we're doing that, while other people are having to dump all the sediment back into the Atlantic Ocean and not being able to reuse that. That really is kind of the end here. I do want to open up for any questions of maybe perhaps the city has, or if there's any expansion of the dredging projects and what that could be beneficially reused and how the cost would be affected.
Does anybody have any questions for Dustin?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we do want to talk a little bit about the beneficial use. I've got Dan Adams and Phil Roars from Public Works up here today. We've talked to you all in the past about, well, two other things I want to mention. Virginia Beach and the ports are joined at the hip on a number of issues. The harbor pilots for the Virginia ports and the Baltimore ports have to use Lynn Haven Inlet, so that's why we are able to get federal money to keep Lynn Haven Inlet cleared out and dredged, and so that's vitally important, and the port realizes that. And also, there was a prior port study did that looked at the physical impact of the ports on all the host cities. The city of Virginia Beach gets more benefit out of Norfolk International Terminals than the city of Norfolk does, because the property in Norfolk is all tax exempt. And yes, the workers go and buy, a soda or something when they're coming and going, but they come, by and large, they come and live in the city of Virginia Beach and buy our homes, as he alluded to. So on the beneficial use, we think most of the sand east of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel is going to be pretty much beach quality, and the Atlantic Ocean channel is beach quality. In fact, in prior beach nourishments for the Atlantic Ocean or the resort area beach, that's where the Corps has been dredging. So we've already been starting the Corps of Engineers dredging project for the deepening of the channels, and the channels have to be deeper out there to take into account the wave action. And so that's of great benefit to all of us. It's a great partnership. We'd love to get the Corps or the port to help pay for part of our dredging, but we just have a good partnership with them. And again, this is going to be very beneficial. We think they can probably direct pump the sand right out of the channel onto the beaches on Chesapeake Beach, especially, maybe with 1 or 2 booster pumps. And I've got, again, Phil and Dan here if y'all have got any technical questions. This is going to be a great benefit to the city. And we do have an announcement coming in the next couple days about some money coming from the federal government that's going to help with our dredging projects.
Great. Is that it? Is Phil going to come up?
I can, sir, if you have any questions. Generally, I'm just here to support. We're very excited for the port and for the deepening, and there's a great opportunity to get a large quantity of sand at relatively low cost. Mayor Sessoms had sent a letter supporting their application, the port's application, for the pilot study that the Corps is doing on beneficial use of dredge material. But even if they're not scored well, or even if they don't win that competition, there's still a great opportunity for us to acquire that sand at a much lower cost than mining it ourselves. So we look forward to it, and it should do well for all our bay beaches as well as our oceanfront.
Sounds like great news. Yes, Shannon.
I will ask one question. Dustin, you spoke about the aid to local ports. Is there a ballpark of what those contributions typically look like?
I believe it's just for the project itself is a 75-25 share, so we could fully fund 75% of that project. We do not fund studies, though, of that. So if we want to make sure that that project is already ready to go before we assess that. I could get you it's a public record, but I think last one was maybe passed where I bored 2 months ago. And it really depends on the project. We don't necessarily fully fund 75% of it all the time, but we could help you out with that. And it really just depends on how many people are applying for it. We had to turn away maybe 8 projects this year of zero funding, and we're able to at least help out on a few other ones, including one in Newport News. So it just really depends. If you have a project that's going to be $20,000 and it could be easily funded that way, I mean, those easy ones and small ones we try to assess really easily because it is such a small aspect to the $1 million. But large projects, we have to look and make sure that the pie is worked out with everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate your information. Mr. Hanson.
I'm hoping that Mr. Bill Gambrell will come through the door. And Bernice is going to go see if she can find him. And there's Mark. Mark, have you seen Bill?
Coming right in.
Ah,
Well, it's actually Barry there.
that's Barry.
Bill's coming in.
That's Carolyn.
Here's
Mac.
And there's Mac.
Thing is,
Bill.
I've seen these people before.
Bill, the podium is yours.
Thank you, sir.
Did he bring your talk?
Hello, everybody. I gotta look and see if I can see it. Kind of pull forward just a little bit, and I probably should put glasses on in case I need to read something. Thanks. Mark, are you doing the clicker or am I doing the clicker? Good. Thank you for having me today. My name's Bill Gambrell. I'm a volunteer for your Historic Preservation Commission, and I am glad to be here today. And my first order of business is to tell you all thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot tell you how different it is over the last 20 years for the support that's come to the historic preservation. It's been remarkable, and a lot of it has to do with y'all's support and helping this city become a certified local government. Before I get too far along here, I've got a present, actually gift. Rosemary Wilson's been our council liaison since we started, and Rosemary and a bunch of the younger people that work on our commission went to see the governor this year during the legislative session, and he had a picture taken and sent to all of them and signed it and told them. We really proud of that trip. We had 2, 3, 4 student members go this year.
We had 3 for this.
It was a great year. I've got just a real quick presentation for you, about 10 separate items, all of which are of interest to me and I think of interest to you. I think that, again, I'll tell you thank you because nothing really would have happened without y'all, and I should say without Rosemary, and definitely without Mark Reed. I will give Mark Reed a plug for being the best planner that I've had to work with in a long time, and I cannot remember when. But we've been wonderfully supported by the council and by the staff and everybody else that's helped us in preservation. In fact, I got a phone call from Bobby Malati, and even the Convention Visitor Bureau is jumping on board. They're doing a presentation on July 3rd with President Monroe, I think he said. I wrote it down. Is it President Monroe? Everybody's jumping on board for historic preservation. We're excited, and I'll get to a little bit more of that in a minute. So this talks about our public the meetings we've had. In 2017, we had this annual meeting at the Central Library, and in 2017, we had 65 people attend. All of them have things to say and are preaching to the choir when they come. But in 2018, we had double the number of people. It's amazing how many more people are becoming more and more involved in preservation. The publicity, it writes down there, the planning department staff developed new releases, or staff releases. I don't need these for that. The newspaper and media have run numerous stories. We've gotten more press for preservation than I can ever remember. And it might just be because I'm more actively involved in it, but it really is a wonderful thing. This is our research grant program slide. It talks about City Council being the initiative of this. We had 19 grants totaling $31,640 awarded in 16-18 FYI. And we did all kind of interesting projects. We have a number of state highway markers and local history curriculum developments. Is this where I talk about? We had two people that we actually funded grants for. Is that on one of our other slides, Mark?
Right here.
There's two in particular that spoke at our annual meeting this year. One had to do with Seaview Beach, and Seaview Beach is an amusement park that used to exist at the end of Great Neck Road, and it was a minorities beach, and it's an incredible place. And the lady that wrote the program for us this year has a website, and I would commend everybody to take a look at the Seaview Beach website, and I think it's seaviewbeach.com. It's absolutely incredible. The second one I would want to mention would be the project that Edna Hendricks and I can't remember did a grant research program for us, and they identified a lot of our minority communities as dating back to being community farms back prior to I guess the Civil War. But they were released as public properties, and many of our smaller communities and minority communities came from these farms. Our historic landmark register, National Register of Historic Places, two big things here. Oceana neighborhood became our first community to be designated on the National Historic Register. And then the Courthouse Village Municipal Center, it says they're currently pending placement on the National Register, but as of this week, we were notified by the federal government that the Courthouse Village Municipal Center has been placed on the National Register. And it's thanks to y'all. I'll go backwards and say thanks to y'all a lot this time. The Cavalier Shores neighborhood, right next to the old Cavalier Hotel. I know my predecessor in this position, Bernice Pope, has spoke to you many times about the historic sidewalks in her neighborhood, but there are more than just historic sidewalks, and that community right now is under review as being potentially our third National Historic District, and we really expect that recognition will come fairly soon. 19 properties added since 2016. We started a historic register many years ago for the city of Virginia Beach. The state and the federal people have always had national registers, but we've gone back this year and the last couple of years actually, and gone to each of the houses in the city or properties in the city that are designated for federal recognition, and every one of them has been added to our personal register list. In addition, we have a number more. The Whitehurst Buffing House across the street. The Yule Farmhouse is in Wilsonare Plantation. Cavalier Drive is right down at the ocean front. The Jefferson Manor Hotel here in that picture. You wouldn't think about that being historic, but that building has been there for 60, 70 years, Mark?
Since 63.
It's amazing when you look in there, and inside, Kitty Bozier is the lady that owns it, has preserved it in a way that you'd just be amazed. You would be amazed if you walked around our city and saw some of the things that we have as part of our community. Our state historic marker dedicated in 2017, the John Thorogood marker and the Cape Henry Railroad's marker, two in particular that were dedicated this past year. Previously, you see these signs throughout the state of Virginia, and it's probably a national thing. It used to be paid for by the state or by the federal government, and as of a few years ago, now these signs will only be erected if the locality supports the recognition, and part of our grant funding came from y'all to help make sure that happened. In 2018, we have 3 more markers planned. We have a skirmish at Kemp's Landing, and then we have the Camp Ashby POW camp that's up on the boulevard right outside of Thalia. And meeting of the 3 commanders is one I'm sorry I'm not familiar with so much yet.
George Washington, General Rochambeau, and Admiral DeGrasse met on board DeGrasse's ship in Lynnhaven Bay in 1781 to plan the final strategies for Yorktown.
So again, that's a credit to you all for helping fund those grants that are required in order to get this designation. This is probably one of the biggest things that's happened this year. We've had a great student involvement program since this commission has started. And a couple of the younger people who have helped over the years have done tremendous work and moved on, and will probably continue to do preservation work as they grow older. But this year, the two people, well, there are three people in the picture, but the two people to my immediate left, Sean Dement, and I can never say her name. Yeah, Matt. They led our student commission as student commission members to creating a special committee for all the other folks that wanted to be on the commission, and they did a lot of work, and not just these two young people, but the rest of the committee. I wanted to make a point to point out the Clio app, because if any of y'all have a cell phone or a smartphone and you have not downloaded the Clio app, you need to. It's something that you can go to the Play Store, you can download the app, and then it's gonna, anywhere you are in the country, you can be at 25th Street and pull that up, and it'll show you the old Coast Guard station. Or you can be on 25th Street in downtown Norfolk, and it'll show you Lipton Iced Tea building. Or in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Anywhere you go, it's GIS supported. And these younger people have done an incredible job of continuing to add things to that app for people to be able to find. And they have to be verified. We send they collect the information, take pictures, they send them to our planning department representative, and then we approve it, and then they get added to this app. But I would tell everybody that if you don't have this on your phone, you absolutely want to, because it's really neat. The Strawberry Festival booth, we came to the conclusion this year that so many people came by, not so many of them already stopped, but they all saw a banner and they all saw our kids, and we thought it was kind of like Facebook, where it's just they're just getting exposed, because we had a lot of people exposed at the Strawberry Festival this year. For 2018-19, we had 7 students that we interviewed. There were 2 that were recommended to our commission to recommend to y'all, and you have that recommendation, and hopefully you'll approve them post haste. We have still got these 2 guys and girls to stick around for a little while to help kind of nurture them a little bit, and to make sure that we're as successful next year with the student members as we could possibly be. The picture that I gave to Rosemary of the governor has a lot of these younger people in it. The 3rd young man in that group is on the committee. I guess it's a subcommittee. Is it a subcommittee? And he's actively engaged, and I think actually is one of your school board candidates this year. Justin Burns. I'm sorry. He would like people to hear his name, I'm sure.
Sure he would.
So this is where I think. Personally, I think that this is where a lot of it started. For a number of years, the city of Virginia Beach toyed around with the idea of becoming certified as a certified local government, and it took a lot of hoops and jumps to get to that point. And then a couple of years back, this council approved the CLG nomination, and we moved forward. With the CLG nomination, it requires that we do a variety of different things that just let people know more about history in our city. And we've taken steps to do what we're supposed to do for the CLG to be acceptable and continue to be certified. And we have a long ways to go, but we are really, really fortunate for this, and this is, again, to your credit. Honoring our heritage. This is really actually cool. We have sent to council on 2 occasions this year letters of proclamations for thanking the groups that were here. But the first one I'm particularly fond of, because on the Historic Preservation Commission, I tell people we're probably the only commission that I know of that has a doctor, lawyer, and an Indian chief as members. We are so fortunate. Lee Lockamy is the Indian chief. Dr. Carville, if he's here somewhere, was gonna. Is our doctor on the commission, and Jimmy Wood, young Jim Wood, is an attorney on the group. And along with those guys, there's a lot a lot of other people who do incredible volunteer work. But we're so proud to be able to tell you that the Native American Heritage Month in 2015 and 16 was designated for Virginia Beach, and this year the African American Heritage Month in 2018. And again, it's all to your credit. The Cavalier Hotel, I have a particular bias about it because I think it's such an iconic building, and it was listed on the Register of National Historic Places in 2014. At the bottom, it talks about it being one of the largest historic rehabilitation tax credits, and that sometimes can scare people. It's like, oh gosh, you're giving money to preservation. I have a personal story that goes along with this a little bit, in that I own a couple small restaurants on 23rd Street, and both of them are in historic cottages. When I bought the first cottage, it cost about $200,000. Now the tax assessor says it's worth about $1 million. And not only is it worth about $1 million, but our payrolls are over $1 million a year. And I'm absolutely positive, because it's the preservation of history, that people want to come there. It's got good food, too.
It's the chocolate tautog, Bill.
It could be that.
Stuff lamb in paper bag is really good.
John's got a tuna preference, I think, but we're really fortunate, and I do believe the Cavalier Hotel is a good example of us preserving a very, very important part of our history. And I know that in the years to come, we're going to get some of that money back. Princess Anne Confederate Monument. This is a curveball that came to us this year, and I will tell you that we are really fortunate and very proud of the direction that we've gotten from Miss Wilson and some other folks that said, don't step up and think that you know the answers to this. We didn't. So we held a public meeting, and then we set up a separate committee for to review what our situation was and where we're going with it. We don't have a final answer for you, but I'll tell you, just to go through the timeline. We received public comment in September 2017. We formed the Princess Anne Confederate Statue Roundtable and formulating recommendations there. I know that Mark has provided you, and if he hasn't, I will. The group of people that are on this committee are phenomenal. You have historians, you have deans of colleges, you have some of the most neatest people that we have in our community, and they're all part of our community, and they've been working tirelessly on this project. So we said 2018 that the Princess Anne Confederate statue to craft recommendations for the Historic Preservation Commission. We've got a general idea of what they're going to be. We're not there yet. We have just a little bit more work to do. They will come to us, this committee will come to the commission, and they will recommend to the commission some alternatives as to which way we should proceed with our monument. And then we will forward them to you, and you have to make the hard decisions. But we believe that the work that's been done here has been very thoughtful, and it's been done by a great range of people that really are unquestionable about having diversity come to the table for something like this. It is absolutely amazing. Princess Anne Courthouse Historic Structure Report. This is where I get to quit stuttering, and Dr. Carville gets to stand up for just a minute, if you would. Dr. Carville is one of the members of our commission. If you have not met him, he's been here before you before. We are so fortunate to have him. He owns one of the historic houses in Virginia Beach on Adam Keeling Road. His wife also serves on the Historic Review Board, and he's a blessing. And this particular report, he's kind of championed, and I'm going to let him just take a couple minutes and tell you about it. Is that right?
Thanks, Bill.
Mayor Jones, council member, and guests. I first came here 3 years ago to ask you all to fund an historic survey of the courthouse building. And just leave that up for the time mark. And this is the fruit of your all's investment. The request for this came from the commission for two reasons. One is our community outreach brought to the surface that one of the foremost concerns of the city of Virginia Beach constituency was preservation of this building. Secondly, it was being used as city use for the real estate offices. And at the same time, it was found to have a significant mold problem and potential illnesses related to that. And because of that, we came to council and asked for an historic structure survey to see just where this building stood. Is it reusable? So what needed to be done to it? And you all granted $50,000 for that survey. It was put out for bid, and Commonwealth Architects of Richmond won the bid. And this is what they produced, a 350-page book, which we have copies for each council member and for others as well, as fruit of their research. They went back to 1813, when the courthouse first went into session, and tracked the multiple renovations during the years since then. And then they did a tremendous in-depth survey of the building itself. They did laser measurements of every brick in that building, surveyed it from the foundation to the roof, and produced this book. And along the way, Mr. Tom Nicholas, our facilities manager, was involved with restoring the ground portion of this building. The restoration was completed last year, and now the Office of Emergency Management has moved into the ground floor right across the street practically from this building. We estimate that the renovation costs were about $250,000, which is equal to about 4 years of rent on equivalent space somewhere else in the city. Certainly a very good investment for preserving Virginia Beach history and very efficient use of our assets. The building and surrounding municipal center have been put up for designation by the Historic Registry, which we just now found out that has been approved on a national basis. This book, in addition to its historic background, also gives very good recommendations for preservation and maintenance of the building in years to come, which I hope will be followed. The Commission thanks you all for your support of these efforts and wanted to let you know the outcome. Thanks very much.
One of the most free with his time individuals that you could hope to have serving on one of your volunteer commissions. I know that this, the city clerk collects the number of hours that folks work as volunteers, and I think that if you looked at our commission, you would find gazillion hours, just remarkable. I'll tell you about 2019 again, but I still wanted to say thank you again. I really do believe I had somebody that's very interested in preservation make it wasn't an unpleasant remark, but she goes, yeah, well, the next council is going to do better. And I go, I don't know how councils can do better than what y'all are doing. We are just so fortunate. My first planning career was in Norfolk, and I wondered why can't Virginia Beach be more like Norfolk, as proactive and aware of what's going on with their history? We've got a lot of history. Even though the city of Virginia Beach started in 1963, Princess Anne County has been here for longer than probably all the other counties, and Norfolk County probably used to be everything. But we are really fortunate, and I should tell you that there are a bunch of other groups that have been involved in preservation that also help push this along, and the Princess Anne Historic Society is absolutely one of them that have forever carried the ball to try to make sure that things are preserved, and we know what's going on in our county. But we're just fortunate, and it's really seriously because of y'all's efforts and by hiring the right people. I like Mark. And so on 2018-19, these are what our projects are working forward towards. The Cape Henry Historic Site Lighthorse Preservation Project. If I had more time, I would ask my good friend Mac Rawls to tell you about that. But Mac stutters more than I do sometimes. that is one of the greatest attributes, assets of this city, and we're moving forward, fast forward. With the grant money that we've gotten to do the work on this site, there's an awful lot of work going to be done here, and then the recent work on City Council's part and staff's part to ensure that that we're going to have access. And thank you, Dave. We're going to have there's going to be access for people to be able to get back and forth to this very, very historic I say monument, but the lighthouse is in itself is the first lighthouse ever constructed in the United States with funds from the United States government. But the second lighthouse, what we call the new lighthouse, was built in 1881. It's amazing what's part of our community. It's absolutely amazing. So, the National Register nominations, will complete. We've completed the Cavalier Shores nomination, and then we're developing a recognition for sign for historic districts. For City Council, we will forward to you in the near future some recommendations about how to deal with the challenge that came from the Confederate monuments that this year, and I really do believe it was a curveball. I don't think that many people even knew that that there was a Confederate monument in Virginia Beach until this became so special. But it is a special place, and I think that you'll find that the recommendations that we're going to forward to you are well thought out and are considerate and are considerate also of historic preservation. One of the most important things for me as a volunteer for this is its history, and we need to celebrate history, and we're doing a lot better job of it in the last 5 years than we've done in the last 50. And I think, is that all I have, Mark? Let's see here. The guidelines that coordinate the city architect and property owners. Dr. White, Stephen White, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but there's an old beach district down at the ocean front, and it's really the central beach, but that was probably one of the first places where I started to see architectural guidelines established, and he, along with other people on your staff, have really helped. I know there's a young lady named Christina Gay that helps with this SGA office now, but they really help try to let people understand how important it is that these guidelines are there. They're not mandatory, but they're there, and they're there to help people. We're just blessed. The archaeological assessment for the northern half of the city has been completed, and the reconnaissance level architectural survey for the upper half of the city has been completed as well, I think. Is it completed now?
It's underway right now, so we'll complete it in the coming year.
They are requirements that come out of the CLG, and we are absolutely moving forward. We are also thankful for the extra grant, the historic planner that was granted this year, and this historic resource management plan at the bottom is something that we're also required by the CLG certification to focus on and update. And that's Bernice Pope, you're here. Bernice preceded me as chairman of this commission. I've done this dubious honor for the last 2 years. Bernice did it for a couple of years, and Mr. Rawls, of course, did it for more than a couple of years. And his wife convinced us that we needed to find somebody else to do all the work. He still does all the work. But we are just thankful and thankful and thankful. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Or the people in this room that are on the commission or the staff, if you have any questions at all.
Any questions for Bill or any of the members of the commission? Yes. Yeah.
I'll tell you thank you again. And
Make a comment.
Yes, Ms. Wilson would like to make a comment.
I will just say that this is the most delightful group of people I've ever had the pleasure to work with. They work hard, they're enthusiastic, everyone gets along, and they absolutely love what they do, and the students have been the most delightful part to watch them love historic preservation. And Preservation Virginia, we're just blown away that we have young people who love it, because we go to their meetings and everybody else is like, oh. And then we got these young people. Yes, historic. And we got these young people that want to do this. And wrapping our arms around the Confederate monument, which could be a pretty controversial topic, we're going to come up with something really, I think, you can't make everyone happy, but I think that we're going to make most people satisfied with our recommendation, and which is going to be a lot better than most communities will do, which is the Virginia Beach way. and it's all because of the way this commission has gone about doing it. And I couldn't be more proud of a group of people as I am of this group.
Thank you. I'm a volunteer. I used to get paid. I joke about it. I used to get paid to come to this room and talk to y'all, and I do it really out of my heart now because it's something that's near and dear to me, and I know how important it is to our community. It really is making our community a better place. I'll leave you with the History Comes Alive presentation for President James Monroe. It's going to be on July 3rd at the 24th Street Park. It is also something that our Convention and Visitor Development Bureau, even they are embracing history as a way to enhance tourism in the city of Virginia Beach.
And Dave, our commission loves Mark. They really love Mark.
Yeah, I could say that as many times as thank you to y'all, but Mark has done an outstanding job for us. We're so fortunate that the change of the departments and how things worked out, that Mark ended up where he ended up, because Mark is absolutely a blessing.
And the council has really stood behind the commission every year and funded just a little bit more, like the grants and the shuttles this year, and so I'm really grateful to all of you to give them the
Mark wouldn't be as
money.
successful as he is if it weren't for Carolyn Smith or Barry Frankenfield, because they both have absolutely supported Mark 110%. And I'll tell you thank you again and let you go on to your work.
Well,
thanks for
you
time.
all for everything that you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was really great. Thanks, Mac. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you for all you've done.
Thanks for the bug alert.
Thanks, Todd.
John, I felt like standing up and saying, you talk about the Cavalier Hotel, you got to talk about John Aaron too, but that probably would have been called out of order.
Special place.
Yeah.
That was a great presentation. You got this.
Okay, next is marketing and sale of city real estate audit results.
I think I'm fine.
Yes, and our auditor, Lyndon Remis, is here to give that presentation.
Welcome, Linda.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jones, Vice Mayor Jim Wood, members of the City Council. We're going to give you a briefing of the audit of the marketing sale of city real estate. I'm sure it's a program many of you are very familiar with. The report was originally issued on May 29th, 2018, but due to the nature and the interest not only from the council but of the public as well, felt it was important to come back and present a summary of the program. Before I get started, I just want to thank Tony Gonzalez from my office. He ran the audit, as well as those that we worked with during the audit, Becky Cuban, City Attorney's Office, Elizabeth Chupik from the City Attorney's Office, Mark Johnson, Bobby Wheeler, and the rest of his folks from Public Works Real Estate. All right? So the purpose and the scope, briefly, purpose of the audit was to determine the compliance with the city's policies and proper conduct over the marketing and sale of residential real estate acquired by the city under the Accident Potential Zone, commonly referred to as APZ1, and the Clear Zone CZ program. The scope of the audit covered marketing sale of the residential real estate acquired from 2008 through April 6, 2018. All right, the objectives. What did we look at when we were looking at the program? Number one is the city real estate. The city real estate was acquired through the BRAC program, were properly disposed, and we're going to get into what we mean by disposed according to city council and management's decisions. The city real estate sales were adequately marketed to ensure that interested parties were given equal opportunity to participate. Third objective were the bid proposals were adequately safeguarded to ensure the confidentiality and integrity of the process. Number four, bidder selection process was properly performed to ensure the absence of any preferential treatment. And number five, cities sold real estate at prices that were reasonable and provided the best value for taxpayers. okay? All right, as I mentioned, many of you are familiar, but for the listening and watching public, just a little bit of background on the program. In response to the 2000 Bragg Commission's conditions to remove Naval Air Station Oceana, City Council adopted the APZ-1 and CZ program. It was a comprehensive plan to stop additional encroachment and reduce existing encroachment around NAS Oceana. City deemed this program that they adopted more effective and fair to affected property owners, okay? This is an example of one of the end products, a park that once had a house on it, okay? All right, so the table below shows the Navy's recommended land use compatibility for new development, right? We wanted to ensure there wasn't any incompatible uses. So basically, under the APZ-1 and clear zone, what was incompatible was pretty much everything. Single family, semi-detached, attached dwellings, multifamilies, dormitories, hotels and motels, mobile home parks, and other residential. All were incompatible uses. Okay, so the city determined that it was best addressed looking at the needs of all stakeholders. Obviously, the Navy and their interest in NAS Oceana, but also the property owners, some who had purchased property prior to even the base's existence. But we wanted a program that reduced the density while preserving the stable neighborhoods within APZ-1 for landowners that did not want to sell. We didn't want to make it a Swiss cheese neighborhood where we just had a few remaining houses and open pockets of land, okay? So the program is made up of three components. We have the APZ-1 ordinance, which basically prohibited incompatible development, which I just showed on the last chart. We had the acquisition program, and this allows the purchase of residential properties at costs that the properties would have retained if the APZ-1 ordinance had not been adopted. Okay, so we had some questions in regards to the city was paying more for the property than they were actually selling it, but to keep in mind that we were acquiring it at a price to be fair to the homeowners as if the APZ-1 ordinance had not been adopted, plus any development rights they might have had. And then the third component is the rollback plan, which incorporates aspects of the acquisition as well as retention and disposition of properties, okay? So we had the disposition committee was created to help evaluate each acquired property. We had various properties come in, and that's basically consisting of city staff, city attorneys, planning, facilities management, and basically they were just determining what is the best use of the property. All right, so let me give you an illustration. Tony, on the next slide. Let me give you an illustration of how the rollback program actually worked. All right, so prior to Bragg, if you look at the first row, we had potentially residential properties developed and or with rights to develop, all potentially eligible for purchase by the city. There was 10 properties. Okay, so you've got developed duplexes, vacant lot, zoned duplexes, and actually single-family homes that were built with zoned duplexes, and that was row 1 prior to Bragg. Once the ordinance was passed, okay, we prevented 6 dwellings, okay? So by passing the ordinance, as you can see, we eliminated 6 dwellings, okay? When we had the acquisitions, we acquired the 2 vacant properties, so eliminated those, and we acquired the 3 dwelling units, okay? So really, that left a single family home on that property, okay? So that's an example. And then with the third component of the program, the rollback disposition, and then through the RFP process, the rebuilds. So we went to the bottom row, which basically resulted in density being reduced by a net of 7 incompatible dwelling units, but preserving the neighborhood. So we've got 3 properties. So basically, it was 6 prevented and 1 rollback. So basically, this is an illustration, an example of how the program not only rolled back and reduced density, but maintained the integrity of the neighborhood for those that still wanted to live there, okay? All right, so prior to the BRAC, the program's implementation in 2005, there were 4,250 existing and potential incompatible residential dwelling units. Based on the program, and I showed you an example, as of first quarter 2018, the city was able to reduce that number by 1,292 dwelling units, net of 39 single-family homes, okay? So basically, we had 909 dwelling units prevented, 383 dwelling units removed, okay? All right, so some of the examples of the program. We had a before, tore it down, rebuild after, all right? An example of where we tore down a property and we had the, we either give the option of the neighbor to purchase the property or the city retains the property, okay? An example of combining 2 properties into one. So we had one where we had actually had a duplex and a single family home that through the program we were able to acquire the properties and build one single family home. Okay, so reducing density, maintaining the integrity, okay? And another example of 2 properties combined into one newer property. All right. So we're getting to the results. So what we looked at as part of the audit, okay, very, very complicated process and inquiring the process. So we wanted to make sure the integrity of the process. We looked at the RFP process because the purchase and the sale to property owners or contractors and builders was done through an RFP process. Okay, Public Works Real Estate received all the requests and compiled them for a presentation to the disposition committee, the spread. Spread oversees the process for the acquisition and disposition of the real estate. The information is discussed in the spread meeting and presented in a formal city council session, and ultimately it was the council that makes the final decision as to which company or individuals is awarded the contract to purchase and build on the property. All right, so now getting to the findings, what we found during the audit. So based on our testing and on the objectives I covered earlier, very positive results. Okay, we basically only had 2 findings during the audit. That means for all the other objectives I covered, they were in fact in compliance and adhering components of the program. So the first finding we had was the RFP. When we looked at the RFP, it did not expressly include individuals as potential bidders. I don't think we purposely excluded them, but I think some of the language may have inadvertently excluded them. So the sale of the city real estate acquired through the APZ1 program is conducted through the RFP process. Construction of single-family dwelling must adhere to stricter building requirements, and that's fine. But the RFP was worded to solicit proposals from building contractors or developers who have a Virginia Class A or B contractor license only. So we thought the wording in the proposal inadvertently disqualifies other willing participants who may not have the requisite building license, but would be more than willing, just like if you were building a home in any neighborhood, willing to work with a contractor or developer who had the requisite license, okay? So when we looked at the actual sales, so there were 88 properties that resulted in 39 net rebuilds. We had basically 5 purchasers, and the top purchaser had 50% of the sales. And as you can see, sales to actual individuals that were willing to work with contractors or bidders, we had no sales to individuals, all right? So our recommendation, management should revise the wording in the RFP to ensure that participation is open to all interest parties as intended in the program. And as a matter of fact, I think that has already, the change has already been made to the RFP, okay? Whether we get bidders or not from individuals, you know, that's still to be determined, but we want to make sure they aren't excluded. All right, finding 2, we looked at a number of RFPs representing a number of properties, and for the most part, things were positive, in compliance. We did have a few minor deficiencies we noted, and it really related to just some of the process of receiving some of the RFPs. We saw a couple that bid proposal for an active RFP. They arrive at the Public Works Real Estate Division, you know, and most of them are arriving right before the submission deadline. And we were just suggesting to them to make sure that everything is properly date stamped so we can maintain the integrity of when it was received, when it was opened, okay? So some of the results we had 2 RFPs, did not have any of the bidders' package and proposals. Thus, we could not determine compliance. Some of that may have been because they were older RFPs, okay? But we did say to ensure, you know, the integrity of the program, all the documents should be maintained. And then we had mentioned that in one RFP, one of the 4 packages was opened the day before the deadline. Okay, so we want to make sure, just like any other RFP, all of the RFPs are opened after the deadline. But relatively speaking, based on the number of RFPs we looked at, I would say they're doing a great job at the Public Works Real Estate Office ensuring the integrity of the RFP process. Okay, so a few recommendations, and most of these have already been implemented or in the process of being implemented. Number 1, obviously, keep all pertinent documents related to the sale of city real estate. Include in the proposal requirement a section of the RFP that bidders should place the documents in a sealed envelope, so that could be properly date stamped and the integrity of the process maintained. And then make sure we're opening all the packages after the established deadline, and we did recommend making that a 2-person process. All right, in summary, based on our analysis and tested the transactions for the sale and marketing of city residential real estate property, looking at the various objectives that we covered, we determined that the process was properly and appropriately conducted with city policies, you know, except for the few issues we noted. I think this slide helps to summarize the impact of the program. If you could look on the left, example of progress, we've got Oceana Boulevard at the little triangle. Before, we still have 2 holdouts, and it is to be stressed that sale of your property was voluntary. So we pretty much cleared out the triangle, providing that green space, but there are 2 holdouts in that area. Okay. As I mentioned, management has properly responded. They've addressed most of the issues. While the program is obviously not in its heyday, it's still active. So I think we still want to make sure we implement the recommendations. And so at this time, I will take any comments or questions regarding what we found related to the
Anybody have any questions or comments for Linda? That looks like you did a great job. Thank you, Linda.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lyndon. Appreciate it. Tony, thank you. So Mayor and Council, Andrew got bumped last week due to time, and he's here today to review the federal funding received by Housing and Neighborhood Preservation. Quick overview of that program.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Manager and Mr. Mayor, members of council. The city manager asked me to review what we do, what the money we get and what we do, so I'll do that real quickly for you. So we seek and utilize available funding. One of the goals of our department has always been to bring in outside revenue along with the funds that the federal government automatically gives to the city. And we use it to do three things: to expand affordable housing, to promote vibrant, well-maintained neighborhoods, and to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. We've been receiving federal funding since 1974. The state at various different times has provided some funding. You as City Council have provided matching, administrative, and most recently program funding, especially for homelessness. And we apply for and administer funds as we see they are appropriate to our mission. Real quick, some of the requirements placed on these federal funds: we have to have multi-year plans, we have to submit annual action plans to the federal government, everything subject to environmental review, and we have to do special HUD reporting requirements. The funds are restricted as to their uses. Each funding source has its own restrictions. But we do have discretion in what we do with them within those allowable uses, and we do have discretion as to who does what with them. And we take that very seriously and choose organizations that are responsive and accountable. All of the funds have deadlines for spending them, deadlines for committing them, and we have to use additional federal electronic financial system to keep track of them. There is an oversight function that HUD exercises. They monitor our programs, sometimes do audits, and the city's external auditor, which audits all the city's books, takes a close look at one of our programs pretty much every year. We have about 7 sources of funds. Community Development Block Grant is the largest. The Home Program, used only for affordable housing. Emergency Solutions Grant, used only for homelessness. An interesting part of this is Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS, which is a regional grant, which we administer for the area all the way up to James City County. We have one provider that provides services throughout the region, and as the largest city in the region, we're the administrator of that funding. You're all familiar with the Housing Choice Voucher, under which we provide about 2,000 vouchers to people so they can afford housing. And we support that program with administrative fees on every leased month of housing. We are the lead agency for Continuum of Care funds, which mostly go directly to nonprofits in our community to help end homelessness. We also administer the process of obtaining state funds for Continuum of Care, also to nonprofits. And finally, we have a new program recently, which is a state rental assistance program, which provides vouchers for people with disabilities. And we earn admin fees to support that program as well. The city has a role in approval of these grants each year. You, with an ordinance that you pass with the annual budget, authorize the city manager to submit an annual plan for the use of those funds. These funds are all in the annual budget, all of those first 4. Also, the Housing Choice Voucher Program funds are in the budget, and every year in April, you authorize the city manager to submit an administrative plan for those funds. The other funds are not in the city budget, but they do go through the city, and we are the lead agency and submit that on behalf of essentially the community of agencies that are part of the Continuum of Care. So this is my estimate. It's definitely not an accounting number, but going back 44 years, I don't have all those records, but generally, I think it's in the ballpark of over $500 million of federal funds that we've received from all of those sources. A couple of state, very minor numbers from the state, mostly those are Housing Choice Vouchers on the other ones. But we have been the administrator of those funds for a long time, and I want to show some of the things that have been done with them. So, for instance, some of you remember the target neighborhoods, which were 10 historically African-American neighborhoods. The City Council adopted plans for the physical revitalization of those neighborhoods. We carried those plans out and completed 10 of them. And we put water, sewer, streets, drainage, housing rehabilitation, and code enforcement, and really physically transformed them. We've been talking about the Community Development Corp. These funds are what made the Community Development Corp happen and made possible the housing that still exists in our community that they created. We've been financing the rehabilitation of owner-occupied low-income housing since the beginning of the CDBG program, and I don't have that number, but it's probably thousands of houses that have been rehabilitated. Every year, thousands of households have housing stability. That means they don't have to have a financial stress due to the cost of their housing through the Housing Choice Voucher Program. You've helped support regional apartment buildings, including Cloverleaf Apartments on Military Highway, Crescent Square on Diamond Springs Road that several of you have personally supported, and those have been supported with federal funds as well as ongoing services to the homeless and for other affordable housing purposes. I'm not going to walk through this chart, but it's there to illustrate that we have a bit of a complicated accounting activity that we have to go through. We receive funds from HUD for 6 different federal sources. You appropriate all those funds. We sort them out and we allocate them to all those different programs at the bottom. Some of them that we operate, so we do programs like code enforcement and Housing Choice Voucher Program, but many others are operated by community nonprofits, including Samaritan House, Judeo-Christian, and others. And all of those are different programs. We account for each program and how the funds are spent and do all the record keeping associated with that. I'm proud of this because it does show the funds flowing from the taxpayers through council all the way to the programs and then to the end recipients. You approved this agenda item last week when it was on your agenda to adjust funding for the actual appropriations we received. It's of interest that it's about $700,000 more than the current year's funding. So we are happy that as a result of the Congress's action, we got a little more money than we have been in recent years. Real quick, we use the money for all different, this is kind of related to that multicolored chart. We use the money in general to manage the programs, provide services for homelessness, rental subsidies, developing new housing, rehabilitating the housing owned by low-income homeowners, for code enforcement, and all of the people with AIDS housing goes to programs that help people in that category. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Any questions for Andy? If not, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Andrew.
The manager is asked to add another item, Sports Center PPA Comprehensive Agreement.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I'm going to pass these down both sides, and then I would ask the Madam Clerk if you just take the extra copies and pass them down. As you know, and I'm going to read direct from the letter because this is almost a public notice with regards to our progress with regards to the Sports Center PPA comprehensive agreement as we work towards that. As you know, on July 25th, 2017, the city solicited conceptual proposals for a sports center facility in accordance with our PPA procurement procedures. After review of the conceptual submittals, we solicited detailed proposals from each development team and ultimately selected MEB General Contractors, Inc. to enter into an interim agreement approved by the council in February. The primary purpose of the interim agreement was to select a site, develop 15% drawings, and negotiate a guaranteed maximum price for construction of the sports center and associated parking. I am pleased to report to you that we have reached that milestone. We recommend awarding the design-build comprehensive agreement to MEB for a GMP, guaranteed maximum price, of $57,776,725 for the building and $10,364,322 for the associated surface parking. We plan to schedule an ordinance for you, the City Council's consideration, approving the design-build comprehensive agreement at your July 10th, 2018 formal meeting. The design-build GMP predominantly provides for the construction of the facility and any fixed assets in the building. Most of the furniture, fixtures, and specialized equipment will be provided by the operator, and the remainder will be provided by the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We expect to negotiate those terms and a long-term operating agreement with the Eastern Sports Management by September. The city's PPA procedures require that details of the terms be posted for public viewing 30 days prior to the execution of the comprehensive agreement. We have posted the terms today, and if approved by you on July 10th, I will be able to execute the agreement on July 12th, 2018. Details of the terms have been posted on the Sports Center section of the city's Purchasing Division website, including a summary of terms, the construction budget, 15% drawings, and the construction schedule. Deputy City Manager Ron Williams and team will provide an updated overview of this project during the Entertainment District briefing at your next meeting on 19 June. Thank you for your support of this project. We are poised to create a unique, world-class sports tournament experience like no other in the United States. And so if you take a look at the second page, you can see some elevations. And as many of you know, this is going to contain about 208, if you go to the third, it will page, 285,000 square feet for courts, sports, and an indoor articulated track with approximately 1,100 surface parking spaces to attract out-of-market tournament business for the Virginia Beach Convention and Visitors Center. The terms, summary of the material terms is located on that page, and some of the itemized descriptions, both for the facility, major facility work items are located on that fourth item along with the parking. In your Friday package, you will receive additional information in preparation for Ron's briefing that you will get next Tuesday. As you know, you all will move to recess in the back half of July, and this affords an opportunity for the contractor to move into site preparation and to move forward with what we believe to be a emergent East Coast facility that is going, and we've had some very positive visitations by national organizations that are looking to book our facility once we break ground. So I appreciate the time to provide that announcement.
Good news.
All right, yes, John.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank staff for moving so quickly on this. I mean, this is really a pretty exciting project for the resort and also for our locals to have a place that, they don't have to travel to the peninsula, particularly for the track and field elements. And I think it's worthy to note that there are other markets out there that were considering building similar facilities that have decided not to, with a recognition that they would not be able to compete with the caliber of facility that this council has decided to build. So I thank the staff and the council for that support.
I think we all agree. All right. I'm going to adjourn the workshop, and in accordance with the Virginia Beach City Code Section 2-21, and by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, hereby call for a special formal session of the Virginia Beach City Council, Tuesday, June 12, 2018, City Managers Conference Room 234, 2401 Courthouse Drive. The following workshop session, which begins at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, June 12, 2018, there will be a special formal session to convene in the closed session for the sole purpose of the City Council discussing and evaluating the performance of City Council employees. The Chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by Section 2.2-3711A Code of Virginia as
Mr. Mayor,
amended.
you have to call the roll on the special session first.
All right. Call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Henley?
Aye.
Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Moss? Mr. Davenport?
Aye.
Ms. Adams? Ms. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Ernst?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Webb?
Aye. Aye. Chair will entertain a motion to recess into closed session pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by Section 2.2-3711A Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes: personnel matters, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1, council appointments, council boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointee evaluations.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Henley? Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Moss? Mr. Davenport?
Aye.
Ms. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Ernst?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Webb?
Aye.